The call came in at 11:47 on a Tuesday morning, while I was standing in the middle of a client's half-finished kitchen in Naperville, holding a tile sample up to the window light. "We need you to come to the office." My sister-in-law's voice was smooth, almost bored. Something came up with the Henderson account. The Henderson account was mine. I had spent 4 months building that relationship from a cold referral into what was shaping up to be a $280,000 residential contract. The biggest single project our firm had ever landed from a private homeowner. I knew every detail of that account. What I didn't know, standing there with a travertine tile in my hand, was that I was about to walk into a room where everything I'd built was already gone. I want to back up because none of this makes sense without understanding who my sister-in-law is and what she means or meant to the family I married into. My name is Waverly. I'm an interior designer. I came up the hard way. Community college associate's degree, then a 4-year program I finished at night while working days at a furniture showroom in Schaumburg, learning the trade from the ground up. I can eyeball a room's square footage within 2%. I know which vendors will cut corners on upholstery foam and which ones won't. I have opinions about grout lines that most people would find unhinged. I love this work the way some people love their children, completely, protectively, and a little irrationally. My husband, I'll call him my husband for now, though that word has an expiration date I'll get to, was named Owen. We met through a mutual friend at a wine tasting in Lincoln Park 8 years ago. Owen was easy to love then. Warm, curious, funny in that quiet way where you don't realize he's made a joke until 30 seconds after he's delivered it. We got married after 2 years, moved into a 2-flat in Wicker Park, and I genuinely thought, that we were building something real. What I didn't fully account for was Sutton. Sutton is Owen's younger sister by 3 years. She is the kind of beautiful that seems engineered for professional settings, sharp cheekbones, always put together. The sort of person who can walk into a room in a blazer she bought at a sample sale and make everyone feel underdressed. She works in the same firm as me. This was not a coincidence. Owen's mother, a woman I'll call my mother-in-law, because naming her feels like giving her more weight than she deserves, had engineered our professional proximity from the beginning. She'd pushed Owen to introduce us socially before I even had my first interview, making sure Sutton and I were already friendly when I joined the firm 18 months into my marriage. Efficient, right? My mother-in-law operates the same way. Her name doesn't matter. What matters is the system she runs, a quiet, relentless campaign to keep her children close and their spouses manageable. She didn't dislike me outright, she just found me inconvenient. My career was too demanding, my schedule was too inflexible. I worked late too often, I traveled to trade shows. I had opinions about things, out loud, in front of other people. She'd bring this up in the gentlest possible ways at Sunday dinners, which were mandatory. "Waverly, you look exhausted. Owen mentioned you've been working weekends again." Pause. Smile. I told him that's just the season you're in. It won't always be this way. The implication landing like a stone in still water. When you settle down, when you have children, when you become what I expect of a woman in my son's life, this particular season will end. Owen never said anything. He'd squeeze my knee under the table, which I'd learned to read as both acknowledgement and dismissal. Yes, I hear it too, but no, I'm not going to do anything about it. The Henderson account changed things. It was my account in every meaningful sense. I'd gotten the lead through an architect I'd cultivated over 2 years, driven out to their estate in Lake Forest, spent 3 meetings listening before I started pitching, built the trust that got us to a letter of intent. When I brought it to our firm's principal, a man named Gerald who'd founded the business 20 years ago and was starting to think about stepping back, he was visibly impressed. Sutton had been looped in as project coordinator. Her official role involved managing client communications and schedules. That was fine, reasonable even, until it wasn't. I noticed small things first. Emails from the Hendersons that CC'd Sutton but arrived after she'd already replied before I'd even seen them. A site visit scheduled for a Tuesday when she knew I'd be in Milwaukee at a vendor meeting. A design concept presented to the clients, my concept, my sketches, my material pulls, described in the meeting notes as developed collaboratively by the project team. I mentioned this to Owen. Once, he said I was reading too much into it. Sutton's thorough, he said. That's a good thing. I didn't bring it up again. The Tuesday the call came, I drove from Naperville back to our River North office in 40 minutes and walked in to find Gerald's assistant waiting for me at the front desk. That was my first signal that something was badly wrong. Gerald didn't send his assistant to the lobby to greet people, unless the situation required a witness. The meeting was brief. Gerald, his assistant, and Sutton sat on one side of the conference table. A printed email thread sat in front of Gerald. He pushed it toward me without preamble. The emails were between me and a trade vendor I'd been working with for years, a man named Roland, who ran a small but excellent tile and stone operation out of the West Loop. The chain showed what appeared to be a negotiation, with me asking Roland to invoice the client for stone at list price while splitting the difference with our firm as a kickback. The kind of arrangement that's not just unethical, it's grounds for immediate termination, and depending on how far the Hendersons wanted to take it, civil liability. I read it twice. A third time. I didn't write these, I said. Gerald looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on his face before, something between regret and resolve. The emails come from your address, Waverly. I know they do. My voice was steadier than I felt, but I didn't write them. Can I see this metadata? Sutton spoke for the first time. I don't think this is the time to get technical. The Hendersons have already been notified. They're withdrawing from the project. The Hendersons had already been notified. I looked at my sister-in-law across that conference table, and I understood. Not all of it, not yet, but enough. The emails were fabricated. They were sent from my account because someone had access to it, or had made it look like they did. The Hendersons had already been told, which meant this wasn't an investigation, it was an execution. The sequence had been decided before I walked through the door. When were the Hendersons notified? I asked. Gerald cleared his throat. This morning, before you called me in. Silence. I placed my hands flat on the table. Gerald, I have worked for this firm for 6 years. I have never once, not once, arranged a kickback with any vendor. Call Roland, right now. Call him in here. I don't think. Call Roland. My voice didn't waver, because if these emails are real, he'll confirm it, and if he can't confirm it, you'll know what you're actually looking at. Gerald called Roland. Put him on speakerphone with the three of us still sitting there. Roland, to his credit and my eternal gratitude, was baffled. I've never had any arrangement like that with Waverly, he said, his voice careful and clear over the speaker. That's not how she operates. I've known her for 5 years. She's one of the most by-the-book people I work with. Sutton's expression didn't change. She'd prepared for this possibility. I could see that now, she said. Roland might not be aware of the full picture, which was a sentence so smoothly delivered I almost missed how little it actually meant. What happened next happened fast. Gerald said they'd need to investigate further, and that pending the outcome, my access to client files would be suspended. My key card deactivated. My projects reassigned. He offered 2 weeks of paid administrative leave and a lawyer's phone number. He didn't meet my eyes when he said it. I drove home. Sat in our driveway for 11 minutes because I wasn't ready to go inside. Then I went in, made coffee, sat down at the kitchen table, and called Owen. He picked up on the second ring. I heard, he said, 2 words. Not, what happened? Not, are you okay? Not, that can't be right, I heard. I asked, though I already knew. Sutton called me. She's really upset, Wav. She said you were angry in the meeting that you, Owen. I stopped him. Your sister set me up. The pause that followed was approximately 4 seconds long. In those 4 seconds, I understood something about my marriage that I'd been carefully not understanding for years. I think you're under a lot of stress right now, he finally said. I didn't argue. I thanked him for picking up and ended the call. The investigation Gerald had promised took 3 weeks. During those 3 weeks, I was functionally unemployable. Anyone who called for a reference was told I was on administrative leave pending an internal review, which in the design industry is the professional equivalent of a yellow caution sign. 2 former clients reached out. I explained the situation as carefully as I could. They were kind. They didn't commit to anything. Owen and I were living in the same house during this time, sleeping in the same bed, eating meals 6 feet apart. He expressed sympathy in the abstract. He brought home Thai food twice and once asked if I wanted to talk through everything, while visibly not wanting me to say yes. When I asked him directly whether he believed me, he said he believed that I genuinely felt wronged, which was not the same thing, and we both knew it. My mother-in-law came over for dinner during the 2nd week of my leave. She brought a casserole, a chicken and rice thing in a covered dish, the gesture so practiced it felt like a prop. She held my hands across the kitchen island and told me that sometimes the universe redirects us toward things we're better suited for. She mentioned that a woman from her church ran a home staging company and was always looking for reliable people with my background. I said thank you and served the casserole. That night, Owen's phone lit up on the coffee table while he was in the shower, Sutton's name on the screen, which wasn't unusual. But the preview text stopped me cold. She believed the casserole thing, lol. Did Mom tell her about the staging job? I picked up the phone, opened the thread. I won't describe every message. I'll just say it was enough. It was more than enough. There were texts going back 4 months, before the Henderson account even closed. Sutton walking their mother through a plan to rebalance the firm's perception of my contributions. My mother-in-law asking whether Gerald would really fire her or just shift her off the account. Sutton saying she needed me off the account and out of the building because I was making it impossible for her to move into a senior role. Owen not initiating, but responding, agreeing occasionally, laughing at things I didn't know were being laughed at. One message from Owen, she's not going to leave quietly, you know how. Sutton, she won't have a choice. I took screenshots, 37 of them. Then I put his phone back on the coffee table exactly where I'd found it, went upstairs and took a shower of my own. I stood under the water until it went cold. I didn't sleep that night. What I did was think. A college friend of mine, I'll call her my friend because that's exactly what she is, had moved to Austin 5 years ago to open her own residential design studio. We'd stayed close the ways you stay close with people who knew you before you became the person you're currently being. She'd texted me twice during the 3 weeks of my leave, both times short and warm. Call me when you're ready. At 6:14 in the morning, I called her. She picked up immediately, already awake, already making coffee, the way she always was. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, which is one of her great gifts. When I finished, she said, "Do you want to come here? Because I need someone who actually knows what a sightline is, and I'm drowning in proposals." I said I'd call her back. Then I called an employment attorney. The attorney, a woman who specialized in wrongful termination and workplace misconduct, was the first person in weeks who looked at my situation with clinical interest rather than performative sympathy. She reviewed the emails I'd saved, the timeline I'd reconstructed, and Roland's availability to provide a statement. She explained that the fabricated email chain, because that is what it was, provably so. The metadata didn't align with my login history, and the IT contractor she connected me with confirmed the discrepancy, represented not just grounds for reinstatement but for a civil claim against the firm for failing to investigate before acting. Gerald moved too fast, she said simply. He had a personal relationship with the family. It compromised his judgment. I asked her to write a letter, a very specific letter sent to Gerald, to the firm's founding partner who'd been semi-retired in Scottsdale for 3 years, to the Hendersons, and to Roland, laying out the discrepancy in the metadata, Roland's statement, and the timeline of events. While she prepared that letter, I packed a bag, one bag, my professional portfolio in a flat case I'd had since graduate school, my licenses and certifications in a manila folder, my laptop, and the clothes I needed for a week. I left a note for Owen on the kitchen counter, short. "I know everything. I'm leaving. When I'm ready to talk, I'll reach out." I drove to Austin in 14 hours with one stop in Missouri for gas and bad coffee. My friend met me at the door of her studio apartment in the South Congress neighborhood, a one-bedroom above a plant nursery, and didn't say a word, just moved aside to let me in and pointed at the pull-out couch she'd already made up. "Tomorrow we'll look at proposals," she said. "Okay," I said. The first months in Austin were bare bones in the best possible way. My friend's studio, Finch Design Co., was small. 3 full-time people, including her, a junior designer, and an office manager named Bev, who was in her early 60s and had opinions about everything and was almost always right. I came in as a consultant, no official title, working on the proposals she'd mentioned that first morning. Within 6 weeks, I'd taken over client intake and developed a vendor tracking system that cut their procurement timeline by nearly a third. Texas was different from Chicago in ways that took some adjustment. The scale of residential projects was bigger. The timelines were more aggressive. The culture was easier in some ways. People in Austin didn't have the same subtle class stratifications I'd grown up navigating in the Midwest, but the work was the work. I knew the work. My friend gave me a desk by the window overlooking the nursery, and eventually a proper title, Associate Director of Client Relations. I found a one-bedroom apartment in the Bolden Creek neighborhood. I got a library card, found a coffee shop that made an acceptable latte, and started running again for the first time since our wedding year. I didn't post anything about my new life on social media. Not yet. That was a deliberate choice. I wasn't hiding, exactly, but I also wasn't ready to be seen. The quiet was the point. Owen texted. Often at first, then less frequently, then in bursts. He cycled through phases. Concern, are you eating? Please tell me you're eating. Justification. You have to understand the position Sutton was in, revisionism. I never said I thought you'd done it, and eventually something that might have been genuine remorse, though I couldn't be certain by then. I responded twice in the first 4 months. Both times I said the same thing, I'll reach out when I'm ready. My mother-in-law called 3 times from a number I didn't recognize, which told me she knew I wouldn't pick up if I saw hers. I let them go to voicemail. The messages were variations on a theme. The family missed me. There had been misunderstandings. She hoped I was taking care of myself. No acknowledgement, no responsibility. Just the warm, practiced voice of a woman who had never in her life been held accountable for anything because she'd always been too careful to leave fingerprints. Sutton didn't reach out at all, which I respected in a cold way. She was the only one who understood the shape of what she'd done. The letter from my attorney landed 8 months after I left Chicago. Gerald called my attorney directly, which was almost funny. He couldn't reach me any other way, and he knew it. The firm's founding partner, back from Scottsdale and apparently furious, had seen the metadata analysis. The Hendersons, upon receiving the letter and reading it, had also reconnected with Roland directly. Roland, being Roland, had given them a clear account of what hadn't happened. The firm offered a settlement, a substantial one. Not an admission of liability technically, because that's how these things work, but the number attached to it was an admission of something. My attorney advised me to take it. I did. When the wire hit my account, I sat with it for a few hours. Then I called my friend into my office and closed the door and told her what I was thinking. "I want to be a partner," I said. "Not a consultant, not an associate. A real partner. I have the capital now to buy in, and I've spent the last 8 months making this place better than it was. I know I'm not wrong about that." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "I was wondering when you were going to ask." We worked out the terms over the following month with the help of a business attorney and Bev, who had strong feelings about the equity split and was, as I mentioned, almost always right. I signed the partnership agreement on a Tuesday afternoon in January, sitting at my desk by the window with the winter light coming through at a low angle and the sound of someone watering plants below. That evening, I posted a single photo to my Instagram account for the first time in nearly 9 months. The exterior of our studio building, the sign above the door now reading Finch and Waverly Design Co. in the font we'd chosen together. The caption was 4 words. "Started something new here." The responses came in waves. Former colleagues, college friends, a few vendors from my Chicago years. Mixed in with the warm messages were several that felt different, careful, fishing. A client I'd worked with before my marriage who wanted to reconnect. A former coworker who mentioned offhand that Gerald had moved on and the firm had restructured. Two people from Owen's extended family who had never once reached out to me in 8 years of marriage, suddenly noting how wonderful Austin looked. Then Owen messaged me. "I can see you're doing really well. I've missed you. I think about what happened all the time. If you're ever open to talking, a real conversation, I'm here. I'd come to Austin if you'd let me." I sat with that message for 2 days, then I responded, "I'm open to a conversation. Come in April when it warms up. There are a few things I want you to hear in person." He booked a flight within the hour. Of course he did. Sutton reached out 4 days later. Her message was more polished than Owen's. Structured like a professional email, full of phrases like, "I've done a lot of reflection and I recognize the impact of my choices." She ended by asking whether I'd be willing to meet if you're ever back in Chicago, or if circumstances ever bring us to the same city. I screenshotted it and added it to a folder I'd been maintaining since the night I stood in my husband's shower going cold. I didn't respond to Sutton, but I did make plans. My mother-in-law came with Owen. I hadn't explicitly invited her, but I hadn't explicitly not invited her either, because I understood, by then I understood very well, that she would assume she was included, and I wanted her there. They arrived on a Thursday afternoon. Austin in April is something. Warm without being aggressive yet, the air still carrying a little of March's edge when the wind comes through. I'd made a reservation for dinner at a restaurant in the East Austin neighborhood. Not the most expensive place in the city, not the most casual, but somewhere with excellent food and, crucially, private booth seating. Owen looked tired, not older in a distinguished way, just tired. My mother-in-law looked exactly the same, which felt almost supernatural. She embraced me in the parking lot with the practiced warmth she'd always had and said, "You look wonderful, honey. This city agrees with you." Dinner was cordial. She asked about the business. I told her, in specific terms, exactly how it was going, the revenue numbers, the staff, the projects as we had in the pipeline. I watched her process the gap between what she'd imagined for me and what was sitting across the table from her. "We're so proud of you," she said midway through the entrees. "Truly. What you've built here." Owen nodded. He'd been quiet most of the evening, watching me the way you watch someone you used to know and are trying to reread. "I appreciate that," I said. "I want to tell something, and I want to say it clearly so there's no ambiguity later." They both waited. What happened in Chicago, the emails, the Henderson account, Gerald's decision, I have documented all of it. Completely. The IT analysis that shows the emails were sent from my credentials without my login, Roland's written statement, the timeline, and I paused here, let it land. Every text message between Sutton and Owen during the 4 months before the termination, including the ones with you. I looked at my mother-in-law. "You were in that thread, you knew what was being planned, you brought the casserole afterward." The restaurant noise continued around us. Someone laughed at a nearby table. A server refilled water glasses. My mother-in-law set down her fork with great control. "Waverly, I'm not finished." My voice was even. "I'm not sharing this to threaten anyone. The settlement is done. The firm restructured. Gerald's founding partner made sure of that. I'm telling you because I want you to know that I know, and I want us to stop pretending otherwise." Owen's hands were flat on the table, his face the particular white of someone who has been bracing for something for a long time and has finally arrived at it. "I filed for divorce 4 months ago," I continued. "The papers are waiting for your signature, Owen. They're in your email, the second attachment." He nodded once, very slowly. "I don't need anything from either of you," I said. "I have what I built. I have what I built here, which is actually better than what I had there, though I wouldn't have known that if you hadn't forced the issue." I folded my napkin and placed it beside my plate. "I wanted you to see that. I wanted to sit across from you and let you see who I am now." My mother-in-law had composed herself by then. She was good at that. She'd always been good at that. She looked at me with something in her expression I hadn't seen before. Not quite remorse. Something more like recognition. You could have made this very messy, she said quietly. For all of us. I know, I said. I paid the check, my name, my card, my business, and walked them to their rental car and said goodbye the way you say goodbye to people you are finished with. Warmly, finally, without malice. My friend was waiting at the studio when I got back, shoes off, sitting cross-legged on the couch with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. She'd cleared her evening without me asking. How was it? She said. I sat down across from her, took my shoes off too. Quiet, I said. It was quieter than I expected. She poured, handed me a glass. Is that good? She asked. I thought about it. About the restaurant and the table and my mother-in-law's face in that particular moment of recognition. About Owen's hands flat on the table and the papers in his email. About the sign above our studio door and the nursery below my desk and the way light comes through the window in January. Yeah, I said, it's exactly right.